Citizenship and Immigration, and we welcome our minister and officials from the department with us today. The subject matter for today are the supplementary estimates B. They have already, just for everyone's information, been deemed reported back to the House because we had scheduling issues that required that to happen. However, it was still felt important for the committee to have the opportunity to discuss with the officials and with the minister the various elements of the SUPs. There are 5 broad issues related to the supplementary estimates. However, the minister is free to give us an update on the department and his work to date, and then the committee will ask questions. As I've said before, I always feel fairly small L liberal when it comes to SUPs. If we get too far off the issues at hand in the supplementary B estimates, I will call you back to the agenda. So use my my generosity well in your work. Minister, thank you for taking the time. I know you've been traveling and busy, so we're glad to have you at the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I'm glad to be here today to discuss my department's 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B. Joining me here today are some of my officials from IRCC, including Deputy Minister Martha Morgan, as well as the department's Assistant Deputy Ministers. Je ferai d'abord de...
I will make some brief introductory remarks in order to describe the highlights of these supplementary estimates.
Brief introductory remarks in order to describe the highlights of these supplementary estimates. Après cette brève allocution,
following these remarks, we will be happy to answer in detail any questions from committee members.
In detail, any questions from committee members. Mr. Chair, the 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B include a net increase of $83.9 million in resources for a number of different items. Last year, our government was proud to restore interim federal health program coverage for all beneficiaries, including and ensuring that all refugees and refugee claimants can access services based on their health needs. The interim federal health program provides limited temporary coverage of healthcare benefits to resettled refugees, asylum seekers, and certain other groups, including victims of human trafficking and individuals who have been detained under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. The interim federal health program is also important for humanitarian reasons because it provides access to basic health care to extremely vulnerable individuals. And it's important for practical reasons. We know that if individuals' health concerns aren't addressed early on, they end up costing society a lot more to treat down the road. This program is vital for newcomers themselves as well as for protecting the public health of our communities. The supplementary estimates include $53 million in funding for this program, reflecting resources required for eligible recipients, including asylum seekers. Mr. Chair, in June 2014, changes to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program were announced that limited access to the program, tightened the labor market impact assessment regime, and introduced enforcement with penalties for employers who don't comply. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is responsible for the International Mobility Program. This program was created for those foreign workers who aren't subject to a labor market impact assessment as part of international agreements or special arrangements. The 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B include $34.2 million in funding to continue to implement these reforms to Temporary Foreign Worker Program and the International Mobility Program. This includes $28.7 million in operating expenses and an additional $4.6 million in capital expenditure for internal system enhancements to support compliance investigations. These funds will allow us to strengthen investigative and enforcement actions against employers, which will help us to better protect temporary workers while ensuring that the program meets its objectives. Mr. Chair, Canadians are proud of our country's long-standing humanitarian traditions, which include offering protection to people around the world facing persecution. Our asylum system is a great example of that tradition, and we must always ensure that it is operating in an effective and efficient manner and that it is protected from abuse. With that in mind, the 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B also includes $4.4 million in funding to strengthen the process for claiming asylum in Canada in order to deter potential abuse by claimants and to safeguard the integrity of Canada's refugee protection system. Another important activity of my department is ensuring the integration of newcomers to Canada. We believe that ensuring that newcomers can succeed in Canada is critical to our own country's future. And that is why we invest significant resources in services to help settle and integrate newcomers and work towards enabling them to become active members of our communities and contributors to Canada's society and economy. The 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B include $1 million in funding for an advertising program aimed at increasing awareness of the programs and services that the government offers to help newcomers integrate and succeed in Canada. The advertised programs and services include those for language skills training, labor market access, and welcoming communities, among others. Mr. Chair, the 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B also include $2.7 million in statutory adjustments for employee benefit plans related to the salary component of funding to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program and the International Mobility Program, and for strengthening of the process for claiming asylum in Canada. As well, the estimates include a $9.5 million decrease related to the transfer of operating budget to Global Affairs Canada in order to support departmental staff in missions abroad. They also include a number of internal transfers totaling $5.1 million to support capital investments. These internal transfers have a net effect of $0 in terms of new resources. Mr. Chair, our government is committed to an immigration system that supports Canada's diversity and helps grow our economy as well as strengthen our society. We're also committed to ensuring that the immigration system is balanced between compassion, efficiency, and economic opportunity for all while protecting the health, safety, and security of all Canadians. These commitments are reflected in everything that we do, including the activities that I have discussed with you today in reference to our 2017-2018 Supplementary Estimates B. Merci beaucoup. Je suis heureux de répondre.
Thank you very much, and I'll be delighted to answer questions from committee members.
The members may have.
Thank you, Minister, for that. Mr. Nandasangri for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister and panel, welcome this morning. Mr. you had indicated that the supplementary estimates B include $4.4 million in funding to strengthen the processing of claiming asylum in Canada. Does that include any funds towards the IRB?
I will let my officials answer that question.
The funding provided for strengthening the process for claiming an asylum for Canada is related to the Ministerial Reviews and Interventions Pilot, which was established in 2012, which provides funding for the department to support the strategic objectives of refugee reform, which was undertaken at the time to deter abuse and protect the integrity of Canada's refugee protection system. So it's the continuation of ongoing funding, which was provided at that time on a pilot basis and has now been made a permanent feature.
Thank you. And then with respect to the processing of legacy cases, I know earlier this year we had about 6,000 cases, if I'm not mistaken, that were in the pipeline, some of them close to 10 years. Can you indicate, I know there's the program in place, can you indicate if how the processing is going and what kind of timelines we can expect, and if you can give us an update as to what the remaining inventory of cases are.
So the inventory was approximately around 5,000 people, 5,000 cases, and the thinking at the time was to put together a special task force to deal with only the legacy cases, and the IRB was able to do that. They put together a legacy task force, and they posted publicly information that suggested that they could get through that legacy backlog in 2 years. Obviously, that doesn't mean that everyone will be processed in 2 years. Some people's hearings will be even earlier than that. They also anticipate that some of those cases will not be in consideration because they would have been either withdrawn by the individuals involved or would be regularized in some other fashion through spousal or something like that. So as of October 31st, 2017, the legacy backlog had 4,917 cases. So that's a drop from the original number, which was around 5,600 people.
And do you have an indication as to, of the 4,917, how many have been scheduled for hearings?
I don't have that information, but I welcome my officials to jump into that.
When we have a couple people from the IRB here, so
About 1,000 are scheduled.
1,000 are scheduled.
But for the record, it's about 1,000 that's been scheduled up to March, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Minister, you just this week on December 3rd, you had announced an action
Just
plan.
one moment. Could I have you actually repeat the number because
Sorry,
you wouldn't have been caught on answer?
Sorry, 1,000 other cases have been scheduled until March.
Sorry, if I could just make a
Can-
I would invite you to join the table, sir,
Thank you.
Off the clock.
and introduce yourself.
Of course. Yeah. My name's Greg Kipling. I'm the Director General for Policy Planning and Corporate Affairs at the IRB. So just a quick clarification, 1,094 cases are ready to proceed currently. And we have, I'm sorry, just going to get the number here. And so 450 hearings have already been held. And in terms of scheduled, there's several hundred scheduled. I don't have the precise figure, but we've been going through a process of ensuring hearing readiness for all of the cases that are in the inventory. And as I indicated, almost just over 1,000 are ready to proceed and are being placed progressively on the schedule. So we're certainly on track for the finalizing the substantive, all of those, the bulk of those cases in accordance with our schedule of 2 years.
Thank you. We obviously, you'll get more time. We recognize the independent nature of the board from the department.
So if I may just direct the question, Mr. Kipling, to you. So are you indicating that the 4,900 or so, 4,917 cases, substantially, most of them will be processed by the end of 2018?
Well, when the task force was established, there was a 2-year timeline starting in late spring, early summer, or summer 2017. So 2 years where I think we're talking 2019 for all those cases to be finalized, because it's over a 2-year period that the task force is operating.
So end of 2019 or
before, I would say, summer, fall 2019.
Thank you. Minister, back to you. With respect to your recent announcement with respect to live-in caregiver
Yes.
program, can you indicate to us how your announcement with respect to processing will help families that are trying to reunite, and for us to be able to ensure that we treat our live-in caregivers in a very fair and just way?
Yes, so as far as I'm concerned, and as far as we are all concerned, we were very careful to listen to the caregiver community directly. who had told us that they had essentially been forgotten for the last number of years. Their cases were not being processed. There were no adequate resources put into their to their pile, and so we prioritized that. And I was very happy to give the caregiver community an update, together with many of my colleagues who echoed the same announcement, that the inventory, the backlog that of real people who have been waiting patiently for years in the old live-in caregiver program, the remaining number is about 23,000 cases. That backlog, we will be able to process 80% of them by the end of 2018. And we were also encouraging eligible and interested new caregivers and their family members to apply under the two new streams of caregiver applications, which are much faster than the old live-in caregiver program.
And one very small question, Minister. I know Bill C-6 went to implementation this fall. Can you indicate to us how that's progressing and what kind of reaction you've had from those who are really being assisted by C-6?
I know that the department is expecting an increase in the number of applications for citizenship because a lot of people were waiting for those changes, and I invite the officials to give an update if they're able to.
We have had a number, and maybe our colleagues from OPS want to speak to that, a number of increase in citizenship applications.
So thank you, Chair. And so we have seen a significant increase as the Bill C-6 came into force. The numbers have kind of doubled or tripled over the weeks, but now it is coming to a plateau. We put in place enough.
Thank you. I'm afraid I have to cut you off there.
Thank you.
Ms. Rempel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that the government has recently gone to tender for a vendor who will write Canada's citizenship test. And it's also my understanding that the government has decided to revise Canada's citizenship guide. Ostensibly, there will be expenditures related to this decision, and my questions relate to the content of both instruments, which has relevancy related to the expenditures included therein. Will the minister reverse his decision to remove female genital mutilation from Canada's citizenship guide?
I haven't done that, and the assertion that, first of all, the citizenship guide hasn't been written. We're still in the consultation stage to put together.
So the draft.
Can I finish my answer?
I don't have
please?
enough time. So the draft
I'm
guide.
trying to finish. Mr. Chair, can I finish? I've been asked a question. I'd like to finish my answer.
Point of order. I was asking a yes or no question.
I've been asked a question. I'd like to finish my answer,
Chair,
please.
Point of order.
If that's possible.
On decorum, you must appreciate I have very limited amount of time to question the minister. I'm looking for a yes or no answer, not a talk the clock answer. So I will be brief and brisk.
The honourable member is suggesting that I've removed something from a product that hasn't been completed. So I'd like to set the record straight about that.
It is a convention of this committee that it is the member's time.
Okay.
So I'm afraid I do have to let her ask the question. And
thank you, Mr. Chair. So then, yes or no, Minister, the document that was released or leaked earlier this year, Canada's Citizenship Guide, was that not
the citizenship guide has not been written.
So will female genital mutilation...
It has not been written.
Will female genital mutilation...
Citizenship guide has not been written yet.
Will female genital mutilation be listed as an intolerable practice in Canada?
The citizenship guide has not been written yet. We're consulting
Minister, this is a yes or no question.
It's not.
Female genital mutilation affects over 200 million women worldwide. We're talking about a woman's clitoris being cut off to remove her sexual agency. This is a practice that happens because it's shrouded in silence, and the reason why it's in Canada's citizenship guide right now is to arm women with rights, understanding of their rights. Will you commit today to ensuring that this practice is listed as an intolerable practice and a crime as it currently is right now?
I will commit to continuing to consult, which your party and your government didn't do when they were drafting their own
I have
citizenship
consulted
guide.
on this, Minister. There are over 17,000 Canadians who have signed a petition to keep this in here. I can't imagine any group that would suggest that you should take it out. So I'm
Citizenship
wondering.
guide has not been written, and I'm consulting with stakeholders.
Well, I'm asking you today.
Well, I've given
I'm
you an
asking you
answer.
today if
Thank
you, this is, ultimately, this is your decision. This affects millions of women worldwide. We know that the Canadian Border Services Agency...
In our government, we make decisions based
Mr.
on
Chair, I have the
consultations.
floor.
Thank you very much.
I have the floor. Mr. Chair,
Well, you asked me a question, I'm answering.
Minister,
Unless you're making a speech.
Minister, this is a very simple yes or no decision. Will you commit to including female genital mutilation
I will
in
commit to
Canada's
continue to
citizenship?
consult stakeholders in a way that you did not do when you were in government.
Which stakeholder are you consulting that is...
We're consulting
which suggests-
experts who are advising us
have there
on,
been any
on
experts
making
that have
sure that the
suggested-
citizenship guide is
have there
diverse,
been any
that it
experts that have
includes women,
suggested-
that it includes
Mr. Chair, point of order.
LGBTQ2
Decorum.
communities who have
Decorum,
not...
Mr. Chair. Point of order on decorum
If
for
I
the
could just
witness.
have the floor for a moment. I'm just being reminded that members should display appropriate courtesy and fairness at all times when questioning witnesses, and that witnesses are to answer questions. However, if they feel the answer has been given, that is also fair. So I would ask the member to show appropriate courtesy and fairness, and I believe the witness has answered the question.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Minister, you've suggested that you're consulting with people on this particular issue.
Yes.
Which groups have suggested that this should be removed from the citizenship guide?
No one has suggested that. it
So
should
will
be
you
removed.
commit today to including female genital mutilation in Canada's citizenship
I'll
guide?
commit to continuing to consult Canadians on the citizenship guide.
So we know from reports this summer that practitioners of female genital mutilation are coming to Canada. The CBSA has been put on alert for this. And we've also had a report saying that Canada is woefully underprepared to deal with the problem of Canadian girls being brought abroad to have the practice done to them. I don't understand why you won't commit today to shedding light on this practice as it has been done within Canada's citizenship guide. So I will ask you again, can you please provide rationale as to why this would be removed from Canada's citizenship guide?
There hasn't been any removing of anything. There's no citizenship guide that has been written. So your assertion that we've removed something from something that hasn't been completed is completely false. So I can't go with
I will
that
go back
logic.
to my previous question. Earlier this year, in June, a leaked copy of the draft citizenship guide was provided to the media. And in that draft, female genital mutilation had been removed from the guide. Additionally, your predecessor had suggested that this would be removed from Canada's citizenship guide. So 2 questions. Was this draft guide not produced by your department?
We have one citizenship guide now. It's the one that exists. The citizenship guide that we're planning to put together hasn't been completed. We're drafting
again,
it, and
the draft
we're in the
guide that was-
consultation stage.
So just to clarify, the draft guide that was released to the media, was that produced by your department?
We are consulting Canadians on producing a new citizenship guide.
So will female
the citizenship
genital-
guide that exists now is the one that is.
Will female
that is in
genital
place.
mutilation be included in the new version of the citizenship guide?
I can't comment on a product that hasn't been completed. We are in the consultation phase.
What is your personal
We're
view?
talking.
What is your personal view? Do you personally
I'm just going
believe...
to remind the member that we're now moving outside the scope, I believe, of
Again,
estimates.
point-
We're into a policy discussion.
No, point of order, Mr. Chair. In regards to relevancy, I set out relevancy on the front end of this. There are
Understood.
expenditures related to the development of this guide and the appropriate test, which ostensibly we are discussing today. I am trying to ascertain whether or not government funds are being appropriately expended on this. Therefore, I say that relevancy.
I've heard the point. However, the minister's personal views on something I do not believe are within the scope of today's meeting.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
With regard to the minister's personal views, the minister's views on this issue, the minister is in charge of setting policy direction. This particular, the development of the citizenship guide, I don't believe requires a cabinet decision. Again, he is going to be providing decision on this. So his views on whether or not this should be included is in fact relevant to the content developed therein and associated expenditures.
And I would rule that they are not, because his personal views do not cost money, and supplementary B estimates are with respect to the expenditure of Her Majesty's funds, and therefore I'd ask the member to move on now.
Thank you. Minister, have you been given direction by the Prime Minister's office to remove female genital mutilation from Canada's citizenship guide?
No.
So is the Prime Minister's office, have you heard from the Prime Minister his personal opinion on if it
I
should be
believe
included
I've
or
already
removed?
answered that question. I have not received direction on this from the Prime Minister's office.
Will you advocate to the Prime Minister to keep the female genital mutilation within Canada's Citizenship Guide?
I have not received direction from the Prime Minister's office regarding this matter.
And just to re-clarify, the draft that was released to the media earlier this year, was that or was that not produced by your department?
The honourable member should know that what we're doing is what you didn't do, which is consult experts on what should go into the Citizenship Guide. That's what we're doing.
Mr. Chair,
when the Citizenship Guide comes out,
Mr. Chair,
you'll see what's in it and what's not in it.
Mr. Chair,
Thank
I'm
you.
asking a very simple question. There's been a lot of debate in the House of Commons on this. I would like an answer from the minister. Was the draft that was leaked to the media that did not include female genital mutilation you know what? I'm going to direct it to the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, the draft of the report, the Citizenship Guide that was leaked to the media earlier this year, was that developed by your department?
We're in the active process on consulting, and there have been multiple drafts of the Citizenship Guide as we consult with various stakeholders, and I can't comment on any particular document that was unofficially provided.
Is female genital mutilation included in the most recent draft that the department is working on?
We're in the process of consulting on that document, and it will be released when the document is final and ready for
Deputy Minister, have there been any groups that have advised the department to remove female genital mutilation from the Citizenship Guide?
We are
Very
consulting
quickly, we're at the end of the
on
time.
with a very wide range of groups on a whole range of issues related to the Citizenship Guide, and that's consultation is active right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Kwan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the officials and the minister. The link money associated under the federal government grants and contracts line item for the grants for the link money for 2016, it was at $4,661,193, and that amount has been reduced to $4,164,743 in 2017. So that's a drop of $496,450 per year, and the government has told providers to expect a drop of 18% over the 3-year term of their contract. Can the minister advise why has that reduction taken place?
Sorry, could you provide more information on where those numbers are from? At the moment, we're just having a hard time following what those are related to.
Well, this is actually from the federal government grants and contract line. In the government's own documents. I would ask then, I'm not going to spend time sort of waiting for an answer. If you can look that information up, I was expecting that we will have this information given that this is supplemental estimates, and for that information to be provided to us in writing after the fact, if you can do that as an undertaking. And within that as an undertaking to explain why this amount has been reduced and where is it being reduced and where the impacts are of that 18% over 3 years. Because I know of at least one institution who's faced with that, and they actually have a long wait list for people trying to access the LINK program. I'm going to ask another question related to the LMIO issue. Can the minister advise how many people were approved without the LMIO requirement under the International Mobility Program? And could I also get the breakdown under the different codes that the government uses for the exemption, and for that to be broken down by province and territory?
Mr. Chair, I can give some of that answer, and some will probably have to get back to you. But in terms of the IMP work permits, in 2016 we had just about 210,000 issued, and out of that 210,000, about 75,000 were employer-specific work permits, and 133,000 were open work permits. In terms of the NOC codes, we would truly, Mr. Chair, have to look into that and get back to you on all the different NOC codes.
Yes, and if you could do that, I'm particularly interested in understanding and knowing how many people were exempt for the LMIO requirement, and the breakdown of that under the codes, and then divided up by province and territory so that I know where they're coming from.
So just to be clear, Mr. Chair, all of those work permits through the IMP would be exempt from the LMIA, but we'll have to follow up on the NOC code piece.
Thank you. With respect to the Living Caregivers Program, so the Minister just talked about that. I have a very specific question. Under the new program, the Minister will know that the Caregivers Program is capped at $5,000 a year. And so I am wondering if the Minister can advise, has that $5,000 cap been met? And if not, what is the number at right now?
So just to give you the first response is, no, the cap has not been met. In terms of the exact number, I'll let Don Edlund respond to that. Or Harpreet, sorry.
So, thank you. In terms of the Live-In Caregiver Program, we, as Minister said, we haven't actually reached that cap of 5,000.
What is the number now?
So, are we, just to clarify the question, Chair, is this about the inventory?
No, this is the Caregivers Program, the new Caregivers Program.
We actually are processing as the new applications come in. And
sorry, let me clarify my question then. Of the 5,000 cap, what number are we at right now?
I don't have that exact number, ma'am, here.
Can we get that number, if I may? Thank you. And the Minister mentioned that the processing time for the new program for the caregivers will be processed within 12 months. However, there are already caregivers who've been waiting for 16 months, over and above the expected processing time.
Right.
So how do you square this circle?
Well, I square it by saying that in every immigration stream where we have processing times and we have a standard, for the most part, we meet the standard, but there's always exceptions. There's people who are stuck in security clearance because that may or may not take a long time, and we still include that in our processing time. So there's always exceptions to that standard. I can't comment on the cases
so
that
maybe
you bring
maybe
forward,
I can
but
offer
I can
this,
tell you.
if I may, Minister, because our time is tight.
Sure.
So I have over 100 cases in my office with issues with both the living caregivers and the caregivers program. Will the Minister commit then to have his staff to?
I mean, you combine two different programs.
I will provide a chart with all of the different issues, with all the different applicants, and will the Minister undertake to ensure that those cases are processed accordingly and in an expedited fashion? Because right now they're not.
Do you have time for me to answer? Because I don't want to use it.
I'm looking for a yes or no answer.
No, because you're talking about two different programs. The Living Caregiver Program, I've already told you that that'll take until 2018 to get rid of the.
So the answer is no. Well, I will.
No, it's not no. It's two different programs with two different timelines.
The Living Caregivers Program, there are people who's been waiting close to 10 years.
Sure, and that's why I made the announcement.
And there are people who's been waiting for
backlog.
7 years, 8 years, and they are not getting processed any faster. My question to the Minister is this: will you commit to actually working through these cases and have your staff work through these cases to ensure that they are processed in an expedited fashion?
We're already doing that, Ms. Kwan. We're already doing that. We've processed 5,000 more cases under the Living Caregiver inventory that we expected this year.
Thank you, Minister, but with all due respect, you're not. And these cases tell you otherwise. I will submit these cases to your office, and I hope that somebody from the officials within your department will undertake to look at these cases and help process these applications. These women have been waiting to be reunited with their
Ms.
families
Kwan,
for more
Mr.
than
Sarai.
20 years.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Minister, for coming. Actually, I'll carry on that real quickly. I was able to give that information on the new Live-In Caregiver announcements in my writing, and I had about 30 from the outset that had come to me. I can happily inform that there's only about 8 or 9 out of that batch of old, and do maybe not 80%, but 75% of the backlog I had seen in my office has been gone. However, every person feels it's their file is important, so they're still eagerly waiting about them. They're happy about going going forward, it's within 12 months. But could you elaborate on how many from the old program might be expected to be completed by the end of this year, like in the next few weeks, and how many in the next quarter, so say January to March in 2018, of the remaining of the larger backlog?
So what we've promised, as you're aware, is of the remaining 23,000 cases in the old program, in the old living caregiver program, we've committed to processing 80% of those cases by the end of next year. In terms of how many we expect to process before the end of this year, I'll let Mr. Kochhar answer that.
So thank you, Chair. So just as Minister said, so 80% of them before December 18. And for us, I do want to mention that the inventory, which we are actually addressing very carefully, that inventory would be reduced by another 10 to 20% in the next coming, so which will take us to the point where we will, by end of December 2018, will be at 80%. We have reduced up till now 60% of that inventory. So that actually is becoming, as we go on, it's eroding and it's actually coming down to that mark.
Or can we expect some in the next 4 months or so? That's what I wanted to know. I've been specifically asked.
Yeah, we could provide you with that information.
Okay, thank you. My next question, Minister, is would you be able to outline the committee the contingency plan or any other activities the government has taken to curtail irregular migration at the border to protect the integrity of our asylum system?
Yes, thank you. It's a very important question. We've done a number of things. First, we have made sure that we are proactive in terms of engaging diaspora communities that have or are about to be affected by changes to any potential changes to the temporary protected status policies of the United States government. We've done that by engaging the Canadian Embassy in Washington, as well as 12 consulates in the United States. They have been very, very active in reaching out to those communities, engaging directly with local community media, correcting misinformation, providing accurate information about our asylum system and our regular migration system. In addition to that, 3 members of Parliament, as well as myself, have been going down to the United States and engaging directly with diaspora communities, but also with service providers who engage with those communities, who provide those communities information, and so that has been well received, and the consulates and the envoys collectively have engaged over 300 stakeholders. And had over 300 meetings.
Okay. Minister, on that note, would you be able to say how many of these irregular migrations are being approved to stay in Canada versus how many are being rejected? Because there's a big belief that some of them are economic refugees and not particularly.
So I can only comment on the number that I saw with respect to Haitian nationals that have been processed lately, and the number of approval of findings of acceptance rates have been around 15% for those nationals, which means 85% have been found, at least in that category, in that group of people, not to be in need of protection. And I think that message has also been repeated in the United States through our outreach efforts.
Okay. Minister, could you highlight the committee what program integrity measures will be implemented under the International Mobility Program and the Temporary Foreign Worker Program to ensure that employers comply with the rules and not abuse those programs?
Thank you. I'll let Mr. McKinnon answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A big part of the program is compliance. We provide money through these subs to ESDC to actually go out and do on-site inspections of employers. We also do at IRCC some audits ourselves of the employers across the country. Through this money, we're also looking at advancing better information technology connection between us and ESDC so that we can support better information sharing between the two departments. So those are some of the things we're doing, Mr. Chair, to ensure compliance.
My next question, it's a new program, the Electronic Travel Authorization Program has come into place, and by and large, like 99.9%, it's a pretty smooth system. But unfortunately, certain groups are victims of it, particularly people who have similar last names, and there's a lot of similarities coming in. And I find that the way to remedy the system is taking too long. So somebody typically only applies a day or two before, or even sometimes in the case of the day of, their name matches somebody in the system. Depending on the nature of the match, sometimes it's a permanent resident in Canada. It takes 4 to 6 weeks sometimes, unfortunately, to remedy that, and they end up missing the event that they're doing. Is there any other advice or any other way that we can increase or speed up that process so that we avoid that? I really wonder the consequences of that program in terms of business people and those trying to make it to their loved ones' events.
Mr. Chair, the electronic travel authorization is a new program, and we know that travelers are getting used to this new travel requirement to Canada. Our service standard is 3 days to get back to travelers should there be any issue with their ETA, so we're strongly recommending that travelers apply in time for at least 3 days in advance, so that if there are any problems, they can be detected and we can be in communication with the traveler. And we are undertaking continued communications on the ETA program in order to increase awareness, and continuing to work on how we refine and improve our processes as we continue implementation of this program.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and a number of questions to ask as well here today. So, Mr. Speaker, in January, the Prime Minister told a public town hall that there would be packages and compensation for employees who chose to relocate to Edmonton from when the Department of Immigration and Citizenship shuts down the doors on the case processing center in Vegreville, Alberta, next year. So, but we now know that the department has no intention of offering packages and compensation. They are giving employees only one choice, and that's to move out of Vegreville, or we'll lay them off. So the department is refusing to offer the package and compensation allowed under the employees' collective agreement. IRCC's harmful actions are completely different than how most departments treat their employees when relocation is involved. So does the minister agree with his department?
So on Vegreville, we've made it very clear that as we move forward with the implementation of our decision, that families and workers will be top of mind, the impact on families and workers and the community. In terms of detailed HR questions, I'll defer to the officials to respond to your question.
Well, it's either the minister, they're just being treated differently than they are in other areas. They're not being given a choice. So is he going to rein in the department and fulfill the Prime Minister's promise of ensuring Vegreville employees are given access to the packages and compensation if they do not wish to relocate in Edmonton? I mean, you said that there were drafts of new citizenship guides so that had been developed, and so can we just have you table those to the committee?
Mr. Chair, the relocation of the processing center from Vegreville to Edmonton has been a very difficult decision. However, it is not about job reduction, but about sustaining and enabling the growth of our operations. Therefore, there has been considerable work in the community to work with, for example, Western economic diversification on community development, and to provide assistance, relocation assistance to any employee who wishes to follow the operations to Edmonton, which many have taken advantage of.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Morgan. You said that there were drafts, though, of the new citizenship guide that had been developed, and I just wondered if you could table that with the committee.
The citizenship guide is under consultation, and it is being worked on as we speak, but it is a result of a consultative process that is underway.
So you can't table, could you table a draft for us?
The citizenship guide that will be made public when it is complete, when the consultations with various individuals and organizations have been completed.
So It's now clear that there's 50 employees that will make the move to Edmonton, who will not make that move, rather, to Edmonton. The department faces a huge hiring challenge for the new case processing center in Edmonton. There's no way that the department's going to be able to staff up quickly enough, and I'm convinced that the backlog of IRCC cases will increase as a result. As of next September, there'll be vacant space in Vegreville, and the willing employees and willing employees, and the department refuses to consider options such as telework or maintaining a satellite office on transitional basis. Once again, is the minister prepared to change the department's misguided approach?
I just want to address one point in your question that I don't agree with, which is that the processing times will go lower due to this. This move will actually ensure an increase in our capacity to process immigration cases by hiring more people, by growing our team.
Well, I'm saying, Mr. Minister,
in Alberta.
I'm saying that
so that would lead to faster processing.
You've got a whole lot of employees here to hire. I don't know where you're going to get them all that fast. That's the reasoning behind things being backed up. So I'm just wondering if you're prepared to change the department's approach in the meantime.
The move to Edmonton would actually result in more jobs for the people of Alberta and result in more capacity for us to process.
But the people that are actually not moving aren't being given the packages to relocate like they were promised. So I'm just wondering if you could visit Vegreville before Christmas to tour the area as a minister and meet with the union and develop a way to provide the Prime Minister's promise being fulfilled? Yes, just yes or no, and I just need a yes or no answer.
And I've met with the mayor, I've met with the community members, I've met with some of the
But given this new information that they're not being compensated, would you go there before Christmas again?
I've already had meetings with a lot of the stakeholders.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. 5 minutes is fast. Mr. Whalen for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I note that there's in different countries have different cultural norms, and of course we're trying to make sure when Canadians come here they attend to those norms. One of Canada's norms is that we're going to do everything we can to prevent gender-based violence, and yet when Jason Kenney and the Conservatives implemented a policy called conditional permanent residency, this policy required sponsored partners to live with their sponsors for at least 2 years in order to maintain their status in Canada, forcing those who are experiencing domestic violence or sexual abuse to stay silent or risk losing their status. This puts spouses in vulnerable situations. Can the minister please explain or outline for the committee why it was important for our government to repeal this atrocious policy and any costs that might have been associated with repealing the policy?
When conditional PR was put in place by the Conservative government, women's advocacy groups, other advocacy groups, experts, everyone told them to not do that because it would place women in vulnerable situations, and they didn't listen. They went ahead with a wrong-headed policy, and here we are. So we made the decision to eliminate conditional PR for 2 reasons. One, because we believe very strongly that it was putting people in vulnerable situations, as mostly women, and so we felt that we had to eliminate that policy. And secondly, the vast majority of people who are sponsored or sponsor spouses do so in good faith, and this was. The repeal of conditional PR was also a recognition of that. And finally, we have confidence and trust in our immigration officers who undergo rigorous training in terms of having an ability to detect and deter and deal with marriage fraud. So that's an example. We were talking earlier about the citizenship guide. That's an example of how our government is different. We actually listen to experts. We want to hear from as many people as possible.
On that note, Minister, I'm interested to know a bit about the process. In a number of the consultations the government has taken, including with the health guide, there's white papers published, there's consultations by the ministerial staff, and then a draft policy would be published for a Phase 2 consultation. Will there be a Phase 2 consultation associated with the citizenship guide that'll give MPs and other parliamentarians an opportunity to deal with constituents and obtain additional feedback? Because that's been a part of the process in other departments.
I can absolutely commit to consulting members of parliament, senators, in the process of, in the consultation process that we're already engaged in. Part of that will be my personal commitment to make sure that we consult caucus and senators and
Perfect.
make sure that
Thank you.
we're
And of
able
course,
to get their input.
As you'd mentioned earlier, when I look online, I look at the current Discover Canada citizenship guidelines. It does have on page 9 a number of differences between cultural practices in other countries which are either illegal but tolerated or legal or even endorsed, which in Canada would be considered crimes. But it's not laid out in a particularly clear way. It's labeled under the heading, barbaric cultural practices. And so when we're trying to educate people on how to conform to cultural norms, I also note that there are other here which aren't indicated. Violence against children and corporal punishment aren't issued. Is there going to be a broader list of cultural norms and changes and differences between Canada's laws and the countries from which people are emigrating, so that the guidelines will be more effective in teaching people what their new legal obligations will be when they come to Canada?
The guide is, Mr. Chair, the guide is still under development, so the precise nature of what will be included in the guide has not been finalized, but I would underline that one of the messages that has been heard in the consultative process is the importance of human rights, including gender equality, to Canada and to Canadian citizenship, and I would expect that that would be a strong theme in the guide.
And in terms of costs associated with this process. In other committees, we talk a little bit about moving towards project-based estimates, where parliamentarians will have a clearer line of sight to how much individual projects cost, so they can be better question staff. Do you have a project breakdown for the consultation process and what the overall costs for that would be, so we can better understand the scope and breadth of what's being done?
Mr. Chair, I'm afraid I may ask you to submit that to the committee if you're able. Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Mr. Soroya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, the Minister and the staff coming. Minister, I have a couple of questions for you regarding the crooked consultants.
Okay.
Has you or your staff directed the department to begin the process of creating a new legislative framework for the body responsible for governing immigration and citizenship consultants?
So thank you very much for the really important question. As you know, the House of Commons just had a unanimous vote on the recommendations emanating from this committee, and I want to thank the committee for its work. This is an important issue. A lot of governments didn't act. We want to act, but we want to get it right. And so we're making sure that we get this right.
Have you started the process yet?
We are examining all the recommendations with the intention of doing this right.
Anything you can table to the committee here?
Not at this time, no.
Has yourself or your staff directed to begin the process of creating by statute an independent public interest body empowered to regulate and govern the professions of immigration consultants?
Not yet, but we're studying the recommendations to make sure we get this right.
Has you or your staff directed to begin the process of creating a new legislative and enforcement framework concerning the offenses of practicing as an immigration consultant while not authorized and other related offenses?
So we're concerned about the problem. We know, the committee has studied the issue, produced very useful recommendations, and we intend to make sure that we get this right.
Have you yourself or your department to examine an oversight processing for immigration consultant by which they can only operate if overseen by a lawyer?
We want to make sure that as we proceed with this issue, we want to protect the Canadian public, and we want to get it right. Many governments have tried to do something on immigration consultants and have not been able to do that. We want to not only do the right thing, but do it right.
The Minister, you are directed the department to develop new procedures for processing application and for communicating with the clients and with prospective applicants as it relates to this committee committee's recommendation found in the report entitled Starting Again, Improving Government Oversight in Immigration Consultants. Anything at all?
As I said, we're looking at the recommendations with the intention of moving in the right way to make sure we satisfy the concerns of Canadians with respect to immigration consultants.
Do we have any time frame when we look at it? 6 months, 9 months, 5 months?
Maybe you can, yeah. So I think by the spring we'll have something in place.
I have something else regarding in the supplementary estimate B217 to 2017-2018, the allocation for the budget was $74 million for the Health Protection Act, right? That number has now been revised to $126 million, the increment of 65%.
Sorry, for which program?
The supplementary estimate B 2017-2018.
Yes.
17.4 million was allocated to health protection. That number has now been revised to 126 million. Considering the increment of $50 million is about 65% increment over the previous budget. Which program is the money, this additional $50 million, what we getting for these $50 million?
So a number of things. First, let's start with the philosophical point. We believe in providing health care to refugees. Your party and your government cut IFHP. We restored
Minister, I'm not disputing this.
And the point, no, but I'm getting to that. So the point is we have to spend money on IFHP in order to minimize the impact on provinces and territories. And it's the right thing to do, and I'm proud of the fact that we're doing that.
The budget increased 65%. In private sector, if it's more than 10% up and down, we are in trouble. It's a 65% increase.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I can indicate the increase in costs for the interim federal health program are due to 3 different components. One is the increased intake of asylum seekers in Canada. Secondly, the increasing number of resettled refugees to Canada and the interim federal health program costs that incurs, including us having extended pre-departure services to resettled refugees, like paying for the immigration medical exam and for certain vaccinations and healthcare treatments before they arrive. And the third component of this $53 million is looking at how long it takes for claims to be processed before the Immigration and Refugee Board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tabarra, we started a few minutes late, so if the Minister has about 3 or 4 more minutes, that would be helpful. Thank you. Mr. Tabarra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the Department and Minister for being here today. Minister, I want to talk a little bit more on specifically kind of the GTA and my region, Waterloo region. And I want to talk about the global skills strategy that was put out in the summer. Over the past decade, there has been an overall, there's been a decrease in some of the tech workers that have been coming. If we look at some of the, in the tech sector, some of the immigration, from 2008 to 2014, it's hovered around 6,000 tech sector immigrants coming to the tech sector. So in 2015, 2016, we've shot up to around 8,000 tech workers coming in. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on something that we export in Waterloo region. We try to do what is called the corridor, and I'll get to the reason why this is relevant. So between Toronto and Waterloo region, there's 423,000 students, 200,000 tech workers, 15,000 tech companies, 5,200 startups, and it's the 4th largest city in North America. So the previous immigration minister visited our region, and he had consultations with a lot of individuals in the region, and one of their issues was, and one of the critical issues was getting global talent. What was happening was that global talent was being snatched from us and taken from, individuals that had great skills, global skills, were going to Australia, were going to other places around the world, and because of our immigration system, it was too hard to get people here quickly. So with the stats that I've just presented, how has that really benefited Canada? And how can we move forward to maintaining middle-class jobs for Canadians?
So thank you very much. I've actually met the same stakeholders in Waterloo as minister, and I heard very loud and clear from them that we just needed to do a better job at getting talent here, but getting it faster. And Global Skills Strategy was the answer to that. And it's a great program. It came directly from businesses who suggested ways in which we can help them. First, it's the 2-week standard to get people here. And when I've gone back to a lot of the different employers, and I've asked them, so is it really 2 weeks? Is it working for you? And they've said, absolutely. The other piece that's really important about the Global Skills Strategy is the ability for Canada to get academics here and waive the work permit for short-term stays where they come and do research and collaborate with other Canadian researchers and then go back. It's an amazing program. It's working well. I've seen it. I've seen the benefits firsthand, and it's the kind of program that addresses the real needs of employers and the needs for businesses to grow by getting talent here and getting it fast.
And I have a number here that 1,600 people within the first 2.5 months.
That's correct.
Have come since it was implemented. So
Yes.
Those are great numbers. My next question will be to the department staff. This is about just visa offices overseas. I have a community of Sudanese people in my riding, and a lot of when they have to do their processing or even to visit Canada, to visit people here, they have to go to Cairo in Egypt, and that's quite a ways away to get there in order to just sign some documents and get pre-approval. So is there anything in the budget that allows for more visa offices in other parts that are kind of isolated?
Mr. Chair, in that regard, I think what we are trying to do is actually to put together a way how we can intake all those applications which are meant to be processed. So our intake methodology is visa application centers. So most of our visa application centers are located at a convenient location where people can actually go and submit their application for processing. As we move forward, we are actually expanding our visa application center framework and also the footprint, which would allow more VACs, or what we call visa application centers, to be in different locations, which will be much more convenient for folks who can actually go in and submit their applications. So that is in works and is probably towards the end of next year. We would have an expanded footprint.
And just to give you some context, we already now have 130 visa application centers around the world, and I'm proud of the fact that the department is coming up with a plan to even increase that footprint, and hopefully those constituents would be able to use these application centers.
Thank you, Minister. I know that you have another meeting to attend and that your officials are able to stay with us. So we'll just give you time to exit. We look forward to your next visit, probably more than you do.
I'm always happy to come to this committee and answer questions.
Thank you. It's
an engaging debate.
It's a privilege for us. I'd ask us we just keep staying here so we can continue. Ms. Kwan, you're next.
Thank you very much. So to the officials, could you confirm for me then that for the supplemental estimates, there are no dollars allocated for the IRB?
Non, vous avez raison, il n'y a aucun montant dans nos supplémentaires Estimate B qui...
There are no amounts in our sub-Bs for that.
Provide information for me. With respect to the ordering council appointments to the IRB, how many of them remain vacant?
I would suggest that we invite Mr. Kipling to the table to answer that if he's able to.
Okay, while we're doing that, I'm going to ask my next question, and I wonder if the officials can provide for me how many citizenship judges have been appointed since the government's come to power, and how many vacancies are there?
We would have to get back to you with those numbers.
Thank you. And if you could break down those numbers for me on both the appointments and vacancies by region and when the appointments were made and when they became vacant. And if I could also get, particularly in the western region, broken down by the cities, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can provide that information to the committee.
Thank you. And could you also advise for those appointments, which ones are part-time, which ones are full-time? And then which ones are vacant, that's part-time and full-time as well? I think the IRB representative is here, yeah.
Yes, with respect to vacancies of GIC appointees, as of December 4th, 2017, there were 34 vacancies on 102 total funded complement.
And how long have they been vacant?
For differing amounts of time.
Could I get a full list so that I can actually see how long they've been vacant under which categories?
Sure, yes.
Thank you. With respect to the IRB, now that we have the IRB representative here, the last appearance, we had heard that there were an increase of 1,400 cases per month to the workload of the IRB. Could you give us an update on what the status is with respect to that?
Sorry, you're looking for an update on what?
Asylum seekers.
In terms of the intake trends?
In terms of the impact of the increase in asylum seekers and the caseload that's being increased for the IRB.
Right. Currently, there's a total pending caseload of or inventory of 43,000 cases. That includes both our legacy cases as well as our new system cases.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kipling. You'll have to get back to the committee if you have additional information you'd like to provide. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if I could then actually get that information submitted to the committee in writing then.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Zahid, we're back to our 7-minute round.
Okay. Thank you,
I
Chair.
think we'll be able to have time for 3 7-minutes. We should get in. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. My first question is about the supplementary estimates. I see that it includes $1 million for settlement services, advertisement. It has certainly been my experience that there is too often a disconnect between the services that are available to the immigrants and the immigrants that need access to those services. So could you please discuss the purposes of this advertising campaign, and can you assure us that it will include advertisement in the ethnic media, which is mostly read by the New Canadians?
Yes, so this funding is intended to increase the awareness of programs and services provided under the settlement services programs of the department, such as language skills courses, labor market access, and welcoming communities. And it's intended that the media mix for this would include a strong focus on ethnic media, including online and print, in order to reach the greatest number of individuals who might be able to take advantage of those services as possible.
Would this include some sort of information which will be provided to the immigrants as they land in Canada? When they land at immigration, are they provided some information about the services which are available?
There's a range of opportunities for individuals to be provided with information, including even prior to landing through our pre-arrival services, as well as when they land, and then subsequently through the settlement service provider organizations, which reach out to new immigrants and provide them with information. And the idea of this advertising is to increase the awareness so that they have a better idea of where to search out exactly what they need.
Would this include some translation other than English into different other languages, which mostly the new immigrants are coming with?
I would have to get back to you on details of the communications plan. It's under development at this point, but given that we are looking at advertising in ethnic media, I would assume that we'd be advertising in the language of the media that we were looking at.
So my next question is about the parents and grandparents category, the stream of immigration. During our committee study of family reunification, we heard about the frustrations which the intake process and the efforts of the department to clear the application backlog. So we also heard about the value of parents and grandparents to the success of the family unit and its integration into Canada and greater contribution to our economy. Before we completed our report, the IRCC announced a lottery system of intake for 2017 applications to the program. Can you report on how the first year under this new system has gone, and has it been successful? Have there been any challenges which you think, and do you anticipate any changes to that in the next year, or you will continue with the lottery system?
Mr. Chair, this was the first year of the new randomized selection intake process that was put in place. And for that process in 2017, sponsors were first required to indicate their interest to sponsor by completing an interest to sponsor form that was made available for 30 days. At the end of this period, the department had received over 100,000 submissions. As per the ministerial instructions, after removing the duplicates from that, 10,000 persons were randomly selected and invited to sponsor their grandparents and parents. From that initial round of 10,000, over 6,000 applications have been received. And since the department didn't receive the full 10,000 from that first round, additional potential sponsors were invited to apply, and they will have until December the 8th for IRCC to receive a complete application. Given that this was the first year of the randomized selection intake process, we will, of course, be looking at this year's experience in order to inform what to do next year.
Okay, thank you. I'll share my rest of my time with Mr. Whalen.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Said. In terms of the IRB and filling the backlog, Mr. Kipling, I'm just wondering whether or not your agency is using the government's appointments website, whether you found that, if you are, whether or not you're seeing good application numbers coming in, or what the backlog or the holdup might be there.
Yes, we're undertaking ongoing recruitment. As you may know, the appointment process is led by PCO, but I understand that there's ongoing recruitment, and that certainly the individuals who are being appointed to the IRB are quality candidates and highly qualified. So we're seeing a good caliber of candidates who are being appointed.
And are you seeing a ramp up, and how would you compare the candidates that are coming forward versus the candidates that were previously appointed?
I mean, I think the quality of the candidates who go through the process, who succeed in the process, is high, and that has been a trend since I have been, privy to the types of candidates that are coming forward. So we're certainly seeing good candidates. We have been seeing good candidates for as long as for several years.
Oh, we have more time.
We have a minute.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. Vegreville, for MPs like me who represent a mixed urban-rural riding in a small center, federal government jobs are extremely important to the diversity of opportunities for young people and to keep communities together and to keep them strong. And so with respect to Vegreville, I must, I find it odd that in the digital age where we're trying to assure people that they have the opportunities to live and contribute and work in a distributed work environment, can Ms. Morgan please explain some of the other factors that may have gone into this decision?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department, the lease on the facility in Vegreville is set to expire on February the 28th, 2019, and as part of the lease renewal process, the department identified the business requirements that it needs going forward to Public Services and Procurement Canada, which included the feasibility of recruiting and retaining staff, to accommodate increases in immigration levels and reducing processing times, a workforce with bilingual capacity to process workloads from across the global departmental network, access to post-secondary educational institutions for
I'm
recruitment
afraid I need to
staff.
cut you off there. I'm very sorry. Would you like to have a written?
It would be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Rempel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Immigration Refugee Board recently told our committee that they are operating with only 65 out of 102 order and council appointment filled. I'm wondering if the department can table with the committee the status of each vacancy in terms of what status of what phase of recruitment it's in and when it is expected to be filled.
Mr. Chair, we've already agreed to table information on the vacancies at the IRB.
Great. Okay. So by the status of each vacancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Earlier this year, on November the 7th, a department official said with the following with regard to funding that was set out in Budget 2017 for the Yazidi Resettlement Initiative. Budget 2017 set out $27.7 million. We later did an evaluation of the amount of money we thought we would actually need and refined our costing, so we asked for $21.7 million. I think about 2/3 of that is related to ongoing income support, interim federal health, and settlement supports that will be available over the next 3 years. Can you table with the committee details around the decision to reduce that amount of funding and what particular areas have been reduced?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Oh boy, where are we going from here? One consistently recurring program that we've heard with the GAR program is the isolation that occurs with when people arrive. We heard from on Tuesday from a Yazidi woman who did not have anyone to greet her at the airport. She was stuck at a hotel. I'm just wondering if these sorts of specialized needs for the Yazidi community were considered by the department in their decision, as Ms. Edlund said on November the 7th, to cut the funding to the initiative.
Yes, Mr. Chair, these kinds of services were planned for and were put in place and were ready. One of the cases that was discussed at committee and another case that was in Chatelaine magazine, we've looked at depth in relation to those cases, and we believe that the narrative around those cases doesn't actually completely cover all of the services that were provided and were in place and were available. But for privacy reasons, I can't get into individualized statements about that. But we do have setups for people to be greeted at the airport, to be greeted at the hotels where they're initially housed, and wraparound supports for them post-arrival in Canada.
Can the department table with the committee a list of stakeholders consulted since the tabling of the government's response to the report entitled Starting Again, Improving Government Oversight of Immigration Consultants as it relates to responding to recommendations found in the report?
Yes.
Thank you. Since tabling the government response to the report entitled Starting Again, Improving Government Oversight of Immigration Consultants, how many complaints of unauthorized practitioners have been referred to the Canada Border Services Agency?
I don't believe, Mr. Chair, that we would have that information available here.
Can the department table that to committee?
We will see whether that information is available.
Thank you. The parliamentary secretary on Friday said that IRCC will provide an information toolkit to the committee and MPs to support its outreach efforts on unscrupulous immigration consultants. When will this be distributed?
We'll get back to you on the timeline on that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. What was the cost been of developing this toolkit?
We'd have to get back to you on the cost as well, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. With regard to changes to the oversight body for the immigration consultant profession, the parliamentary secretary said the government expects to be able to provide more information on this way forward next year. Has the minister or his staff told you when this way forward will be presented to the public?
This is a very complicated issue, and the committee has made a number of recommendations that are complicated and interrelated that need to be studied in depth and looked at prior to tabling, prior to responding. And so, as the minister noted earlier in his statements today, we would expect to be moving forward on this issue in more detail in the spring.
Does the department have a project plan in place to respond to the recommendations found in the report?
The department is actively analyzing the recommendations in the report, as well as the fundamental challenges that were identified by the committee, and is actively working towards developing recommendations and an approach forward for the government to recommend and propose to the government.
When does the department anticipate having a final solution in place?
As the minister noted earlier, Mr. Chair, we expect to be returning in the spring with recommendations to the government regarding how to proceed on these issues.
Thank you. Going back. I just want to go back to the Vegreville questions. Why was there a discrepancy between the advice given by the department and the promise made by the Prime Minister in terms of offering packages to affected employees?
Individuals who the primary objective of the move to Edmonton from Vegreville is to retain staff and to, in fact, expand our footprint in Alberta. As a result, employees who have decided to move and who were considering moving were offered the opportunity to have those moving expenses paid for, as well as we also converted a number of term employees who were not permanent employees, and that enabled them as well to have moving expenses paid for in order that they could move to Edmonton should they choose, in order that we can continue to keep our capacity and, in fact, expand our capacity in that area.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I just have one more question before my time's up. Normally, all interviews for permanent residency are conducted in person at an immigration office. Has the Department of Immigration started conducting permanent residency landing interviews over the phone to reduce costs?
Mr. Chair, the permanent residency component, which we are actually piloting, is to actually have them land by phone, but obviously they would actually have to come to an office so that we can actually have all the paperwork done on that. And the phone landings is a kind of a pilot which would allow us to look at those which are in Canada folks who already have the visa with them, and they could land in that context.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you are willing, we have 5 minutes left to leave, but if you could give us 7 minutes, Ms. Kwan could have her full 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. With respect to the IRB, with respect to the processing of the different, with respect to the processing of the asylum seeker demand, with the influx of the asylum seekers, that would mean internal allocation or reallocation, if you will, of resources in order to accommodate the increased demand. Could the officials advise which stream of application processing times have been impacted as a result of this since January?
Mr. Chair, the immigration processing streams are independent from the processing of claims for asylum seekers at the Immigration and Refugee Board. If the member is referring to the processing for eligibility of asylum claimants who have recently entered Canada prior to the IRB phase, that has been accomplished with the reallocation of resources from within the department and has not affected processing times in other streams of our immigration-related activities.
Where did the reallocation of resources come from?
Reallocation of resources was made by reducing the level of other activities that were non-essential or could be delayed, but not related to the processing of permanent immigration, where we have targets to meet, or temporary residence visas. And we brought in staff from across the country, where we used a lot of overtime and undertook a number of strategies in order to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I wonder if you can provide to the committee then the breakdown of where these other non-essential, services, if you will, came from. I would actually like to see a breakdown of exactly where those resources came from.
Mr. Chair, I believe that was a previous response that might actually be with the committee, but I will highlight this, Ms. Kwan. 70% of the 156 staff that were relocated throughout the time period of standing up the operations in Quebec, 70% of that 156 came from the immigration line of business, 15% came from the citizenship line, and 1% came from just various other functions and duties in our regional offices. 14% came from headquarters and other places. So we used multiple pockets of individuals.
So can you be more specific, though? So when you say it came from immigration services, what immigration services?
Processing of all immigration types of lines that occur in the domestic network.
So can you
permanent resident processing?
Okay, can you give me a list of those immigration services, and when you say processing of those applications, what they are, just so that I can have the categories with the understanding of what they are, into the details, because in these broad categories is meaningless, frankly, that information.
Yes.
With respect to the $9.5 million decrease related to the transfer of operating budget to Global Affairs Canada to support departmental staff in missions abroad, could officials provide us an information of what missions abroad, and could you provide us with a list of what those missions are and the purpose of the missions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we can definitely provide that information. We provided, we have transferred des fonds additionnels aux missions de Dakar, Accra, Bangladesh.
We have transferred additional funding for missions in Dakar, Bangor, and Ganju, as well as other cities, to beef up the missions. We have had to make changes to our operations there and expand their footprint.
Allocated as a result of the Yacidis initiative?
Non, pas dans ce montant-là, à ce point-ci.
Okay. And
not in that amount, no.
Support for capital investments. Is that for the Quebec asylum seekers temporary housing? Is that the capital investment? What is the capital investment in this line item?
Non, le capital investment.
The capital investment is investments on IT systems. For example, the GCMS that we're using in the department, the Global Case Management Systems. It's investment in IT that will make it possible for us to improve processing times.
The issue around reallocation of existing resources to process the living caregivers and caregivers application processing delays, where did those internal resources come from?
Mr. Chair, every year we allocate resources to different lines of business in order to meet priorities. But in the case of the, for example, we've received funding to improve our processing times for spousal applications, and on caregivers, it's really a function of prioritizing those applications but we are constantly moving work around the network so that we can prioritize. Partly, it's also a question of level space, and I think that's been a key driver in the caregivers case, that we've increased the number of caregivers that we had level space for every year, so that we could bring in more so really than taking away from one area to another. It's actually allowed us to process more because we had the level space that was tabled in Parliament that allowed us to bring in more in any given year.
At any given time, whenever you have reallocation of priorities, as the government have the right to do so, that means some other priority has dropped off. So what priority has dropped off as a result of that? Because one of the issue, from my perspective, on the living caregivers and caregivers program, I've always called for a special measure so that we don't actually displace other programs. So somewhere along the line, something got dropped. What is it?
Mr. Chair, last year when the permanent level of immigration was set at 300,000, the department was funded for that. It was funded for the processing costs that are related to bringing in 300,000 individuals to Canada, and also the settlement costs that are associated with that. And that includes the increase in the number of caregivers that we were funded to process. So therefore, there wasn't an impact on other lines of business from that. It was part of the funding cycle, and going forward with the 3-year levels plan, the department has also been funded on a per capita basis for the immigrants that are going to be coming into Canada and their settlement services.
Thank you very much. That ends this part of our meeting. Again, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank the deputy and all the officials for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again as we continue our work. We're moving into in camera in about 2 minutes, and we'll continue our business meeting.
The TV guys want you to.